No, well, I don't know whether to. Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Siam Society. My name is Lia Genovese and I'm a member of the lecture committee. The Siam Society offers study tours, lectures, concerts, and heritage conservation events, all detailed on their website, which is www.thesiamsociety.org. And now, a few details about forthcoming events, particularly lectures, because there are quite a few. Next Tuesday at 2 p.m., the 21st of November, a special talk to celebrate 50 years of diplomatic relations between Thailand and Hungary. And there is the involvement of the Hungarian embassy in Bangkok. That should be not missed. On Thursday, the 30th of November, 7 p.m., a talk on the ring collection of Bencherong porcelain in Chicago by Dr. Nicholas Revere. On Thursday, the 7th of December, The Social Life of Teak, based on a recent book. On the 14th of December, also at 7 p.m., Enchanted Land, a book talk on foreign writings about Chiang Mai and the north of Siam in the early 20th century. We already have lectures lined up for January, February, and April, and others are being arranged over the next few days and weeks. So please keep your eyes peeled for more lectures. And now to tonight's speaker, Dr. Sean Chadwell. Dr. Chadwell has lived and worked in the USA, in India, China, and Laos. Since 2014, he has been involved with the Luang Prabang Film Festival. He is executive director of Blue Chair, formerly known as Luang Prabang Film Festival. Dr. Chadwell's presentation will last about 40 to 45 minutes, so hopefully you can all stay for the Q&A afterwards, which will last about 10 to 15 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Sean Chadwell.
Thank you, and thank you, Leah, for encouraging me to propose the talk tonight. Thanks to the Siam Society for having me here. I'm going to try to stay behind this dreaded line where the microphone squeals, and apologize in advance if it does. The picture on the screen right there is from the opening of the festival last December. So this is the opening evening in Luang Prabang, December 8th of last year. And the slides all have this, I made a little timeline to go at the bottom because I'm going to jump around in time a lot. In fact, for the first part of the presentation, I'll move backwards in time, kind of like a Christopher Nolan thing, and then I'm going to come forward after that. I saw some people smile. So what I want to do is, when I first proposed this talk, I had said I'd like to talk about the Luang Prabang Film Festival organization, which is now called Blue Chair, and the work that we do around the year to support the filmmaking industry in Laos, which is still nascent, but you'll learn something about some of the young filmmakers tonight. And really to brag about what we do as an organization and how great we are for supporting these young filmmakers. And she said, oh, why don't you talk about the history of Lao film instead? And I initially balked because she thinks I'm an expert, but I didn't know a lot about the history. And also I thought it would take about 5 minutes, and she said it should be a 40-minute talk because there isn't much history there. But it turns out it's really interesting, and what I learned in the process of doing the research for the talk was that the way we tell the story about the festival could be a little bit different as well. I mean, the way we have conventionally told the story, and I'll tell you this before I get started, is to say that an American guy who's named Gabriel Cooperman showed up in Luang Prabang in 2009. He had a background in media studies, and he had worked for MTV in New York, loved film, and he loved Luang Prabang, and he said, I want to have a film festival here. And he went to the National Department of Cinema in Vientiane and talked to them, and they were behind the plan, and off it went, right? Well, it turns out Vientiane was ready for a film festival, and I'm going to talk about some of that history and kind of leave Gabriel out of it and leave that part of the story out of it for this evening. So this is 2022. The credits on screen, if you could see closely enough, my name is in those credits. That's why I used this still. But this is a Lao short film we opened the festival with called Fly, Sandy, Fly. I'm not going to be showing any full films tonight or any part of this one, but I'll let you know at the end or during questions I can tell you a little bit about how you might find some Lao films to watch. So now we're back to 2011. This is the second Luang Prabang Film Festival, and the guy holding the program is named Boon Chau Pichit. Boon Chau Pichit was at the time the director of the Lao National Cinema Department. He had worked there. I think he'd been director for several years at this point. Before that, he had studied in Germany, in Dresden Technical University on film archiving. You can see he's happily holding the program there, and you can also see our trademark blue chairs. They were already part of our kind of brand identity in 2011. And I say our, even though I wasn't there until a few years later. But I like this picture because he's happy here. In later years, apparently, the relationship would sour a little bit. But he was happy with what we were doing. And he welcomed the festival as a way both to raise the profile of what was happening, what was just beginning to happen in Lao film at that time, and to bring filmmakers from the other parts of Southeast Asia, which is, one of the reasons Lao filmmakers have succeeded is that they formed networks and they formed partnerships with filmmakers in other countries, especially Thailand. Back to 3 years before that. So there's no Luang Prabang Film Festival now. And in fact, there's never been a commercially produced fiction narrative film in Laos before this film, Sabaidee Luang Prabang, which was a co-production with a Thai company. The Lao company is called Lao Art Media, and I'll say more about them later, but if you know about Thai film and actors, you recognize Ananda Everingham on the right. He's with a Lao actress named Kamli, I can't remember her last name, on the left there. And this film was really huge for Laos and for Luang Prabang because literally nothing had ever been done like it before. You could say maybe, they have some records of a film made, I think, in 1960. That was a feature narrative, but it's been lost. We just know the title. And so this is something new. This is 2008. I'm going to come back to this one. I'm just checking to make sure I haven't forgotten. One of the reasons the Lao government was willing to approve the script and the production of this film was that it promotes Laos as a beautiful tourist destination. It's sort of, in fact, there were rewrites of the script that were dictated by the cinema department in Laos because they wanted Lao women to look more traditional, to be wearing sins at all times, things like that, right? But they got everything they wanted, and the film was the result. So that's 2008. And we'll jump all the way back to 2001. And here's Boon Chau in an essay in a book I cannot get a hold of. If anybody in this room has this book, I looked in the library here, and it's hard to find. And if you read about it online, you'll learn that it's hard to find. But this is a guy with the program from 2011, right? This is Boon Chau Pichit. And he's writing in 2001 about the state of Lao filmmaking. And what he tells us is, we can't do it. We don't have the expertise. We don't have the money. We don't, it's not going to happen unless it's international co-production. And it's really from this point forward that Boon Chau, in his government roles, begins pushing things like, hey, let's have film festivals, or let's allow private film companies to set up and co-produce with companies in other countries, right? It takes 2001 to 2007 years, right, for that to reach anything of consequence in Sabaidee Luang Prabang, but he's working on it in 2001. And I would say, in fact, that without this start in 2001 and what happens a little bit before, we wouldn't have the festival either, by 2011, or 2010 is the first year. And Bun Chao was also, I'll say a little bit more about him later, but he was also a founding member of the Southeast Asia Pacific Audiovisual, I always have to look, Audiovisual Archive Association. And he started the first archive of Lao films. It's a collection that, the last I understood, had like 16,000 reels of film. I've seen The Door. I've never seen Behind the Door. I hope someday to see Behind the Door. Okay, so this, for me, is where it gets really interesting. So this is a journal published by a Japanese documentary festival, the Yamagata Documentary Festival, Documentary Box, or DocBox. And I think it's still in publication. It's kind of an academic film studies journal. 1999, this guy, Som Ock Southiponh, writes an essay. He actually, it turns out, he dictated the essay, and it was written for him, and he approved it. But Som Ock says these things. Laotian cinema does not really exist, right? This is 99. He's not lying exactly. And he wants to build one. He's very hopeful in 1999, actually, and he's got a lot of reason to be. I don't want to jump behind myself in my presentation, but he's actually already accomplished quite a bit. He made the first Lao fiction film. It was a government production, so it wasn't a private production, but it was the first fiction feature that was released since the revolution. So 1975 to he made it in 1988. And in 1993, after he made the 1988 film, 1993, he started his own production company. It was probably the first one in Laos. I can't confirm that. Lao Inter Arts. And he made a documentary that was French-funded called Lantin Spinning Tops, about the Lantin people. And this documentary looks brilliant. He describes it in the essay as a kind of meditation on the migratory sort of pattern of the Lantin people who practice a kind of burn. It's not slash and burn. It's more like Sweden agriculture, right? So they burn a bit, they move on, but they eventually cycle back. And they also are known for these spinning top toys that they make. And so he connects those two things, right? And this really, and I so badly want to see this. And if I do, I'll send you all a note and tell you where you can find it. But so in this, he talks about making these things. He talks about forming the company. But it all started with this film for him, which he released in 1988. This is Red Lotus, Boadang. And I'm going to play a little clip from the end. I hope I'm not giving too much away. And the clip is terrible. Like the sound and the image quality are really terrible. It's kind of a fantasy of mine that I can find both money and the raw stuff to do a remastering. But in the film, it's produced by the government, so it's got to be kind of propagandistic. It has to support the party and the messaging. But there's a village girl in Sian Quang who falls in love with a Pathet Lao fighter, one of the good guys, right? But her stepfather, who's really a mean guy, he wants her to marry one of the American-supported troops who come down and beat everybody up from time to time. So it's kind of, it's that kind of story. But it's well made. It was made for $5,000. They shot like 7 or 8 reels of cheap black and white film on an old Soviet camera. They had to develop it all in Hanoi. Had to be edited in Hanoi. They didn't have post-production facilities set up in Vientiane. And I've talked to somebody who thinks they used every inch of all of that film in the final cut, right? They just had to like squeeze it out, right? So it's kind of an amazing accomplishment, and it's the first thing to be released. So I'll play this clip, and in the clip, Boadang is, she's been dragged to this like little pond or something, like big mud puddle, by the bad guy, but her her suitor and the good guy has come down there, and that there's kind of a standoff with guns. Bad guy doesn't know there are more good guys in the hills. So we're going to see this climactic part here.
ระวังมันได้ปืน
หยุดยกมันขึ้นหมดแดงวางปืนลงเดี๋ยวนี้ได้ยินบ่
เป็นยังไงบ้านมันฮะปลอดภัยหรือบ่ล่ะฮะอุ้ยมันเป็นอย่างที่เนาะ
หมดแดง
This is the kind of movie it is. It's good, though. I mean, it's really kind of... I'd love to see a better version, a better copy of this film. You can sense what's happening. You get the idea. Som Ock wasn't meant to direct the film. He was supposed to be the cinematographer. Excuse me. That's what he studied. But like the first day he showed up and the director disappeared, and they said, "Som Ock, you direct," and so he did. And he was making it in 1985, and he finishes this film and marries the star. Her name is Som Chit, playing Boa Deng, and they open a bakery together because he said he knew he wanted to make movies. And he knew he wasn't going to be able to make the movies he wanted to make working for the government. They were never going to have enough money. He was just not going to be, he was going to have to raise his own money and do his own thing. So he left the cinema department, left the National Film Company, opened a bakery with Som Chit. And just to remind you, like 5 years later, they had enough money to start their studio. They were getting grants to make documentary films. And then again by 1999, he writes in this essay that he was ready. He had his feature screenplay written. It was ready to produce. He had a producer. They were beginning to raise money to make it. And then we don't ever hear anything from him ever again. So I'll come back to him later. And I want to talk a little bit about... let's get through this. But first I'll say this, that there was a film made before Som Chit's that was produced for the government cinema company by another director, Som Chit Posena, in 1983, The Sound of Gunfire from the Plain of Jars. You can watch the entire thing on YouTube. It's not, the copy of this one is pretty good. I wanted to show a clip. It's kind of corny. And it's a little bit didactic. It is propagandistic. But it's not bad. But even though it was produced by the government film company, the government censors did not approve it for exhibition in Laos. I don't know why, but they decided it was too maybe sexy. I don't know. I don't know what happened, but it didn't get cleared. You can watch it, as I said, today, but it wasn't shown around the country. It wasn't allowed to be exhibited at festivals or anything. And I'm not sure what became of Som Chit Posena. So now we're going even farther back in time, and we're still with Som Ock, who made Red Lotus. He was sent in 1975, of course, the Pathet Lao takes over the country, the royal family hands over power, and Som Ock wants to be a lawyer. This was his, he thought he was going to study law and become a lawyer, and the government said, no, we want you to be a filmmaker. So he was sent with a whole bunch of people, like a lot of people, young people from Laos were sent out to Eastern Europe, to Soviet bloc schools and other places. He was sent to one of the best film schools in the world, which is colloquially called FAMU, at the Charles University in Prague, School of, I always have to look, film and TV. And if you know your sort of fancy directors, you might know the name Emir Kusturica. He and Kusturica were there at the same time. They overlapped by 1 or 2 years. Som Ock got there in 1977. He stayed in Czechoslovakia for 9 years. He only went back to Laos one time to make a short documentary called Land of a Million Elephants for his master's degree. He also wrote a thesis on Lao film, apparently in Czechoslovakian. I would love to get my hands on that as well. But after 9 years, he returned. He took the job with the film department. And that brings us sort of, I keep pressing the wrong button, all the way back. So before 1973, 75, there's not a lot that we know. We know that in 1974 there were 16 movie theaters, which is a lot more than there are today, which I find really interesting. The theaters, 9 of them were in Vientiane. Nowadays, I might have to switch mics. This keeps going on. Can you all hear me? Okay. Okay. Nowadays we have cinemas in Vientiane and then Pak Se and Savannakhet. But there's nothing north of Vientiane. There's no place you can go out and watch a movie. 74, there were a lot more. As in Thailand, films were commonly shown in the countryside with live interpretation. I don't know if any of you have seen ads for this movie that is... Oh, thank you. That's now... Is this one? There we go. So there's a new movie on Netflix. If anybody knows the name, shout it out. But it's about the people who would go around to the countryside. Have you seen the ad for this? Anybody? So they would do the live simultaneous sort of voices for the characters in the movie in Thai, so the people in the countryside could watch things like. What was the? I was just talking to you about this the other day. I think Shane, the American. Serpico. In fact, Serpico was a big hit out in the Thai countryside because the interpreter would sometimes use the names of local corrupt cops, and so people found it very engaging and funny. We had that as well in Laos. There's really little out there, and both Boon Chau and Som Ock in their essays from 1999 and 2001 point to this fact. There's very little known about what happened in Laos prior to 1975. We have titles of a half dozen things. One of them is Fate of the Girl. 1960, that was fiction, but there's not a copy of it. And it was probably produced with Vietnamese support. This is and I'm just speculating based on things that Boon Chau said. And the oldest documentary dates back to 1956. I don't know if any of you have seen this film called Chang, which is from the late, I want to say it's from the 1920s, 29 or so. And it's, a lot of people in Luang Prabang say that it was made in Laos, but it was probably made in Thailand. There's some hotels around town show it every night, and you can watch it online as well. Chang, like elephant. It's kind of amazing for how many animals are shot, like real live big cats and stuff. Like, it's breathtaking. But it's also, it's in the style of the kind of docudramas of the time, like Nanook of the North. But it's not clear exactly where it was filmed. Might have been Siaburi, might have been in Thailand. So we're not going to claim that one for Laos tonight. If you have a chance, though, I recommend seeing it. Okay, I'm going to jump all the way back to Sabaidee Luang Prabang. Lao Art Media. So we're now at 2008. Boon Chau published his essay on Lao cinema in 2001. Som Ock published his in 1999 and then went off the map. By 2008, Anuson Sirisakda and Duang Mani had formed Lao Art Media, which is a new private studio in Vientiane. And they were mainly doing music production and some music videos and things like that. And they worked out this arrangement with a Thai company and, brought Ananda into Laos for the first time to be in a movie. And Anysay Keola, who's a Lao filmmaker I'll tell you more about in a little bit, was an undergraduate studying at Monash University in Australia for a degree in business. I think that's what his family told him to do. And somehow he saw this and it just blew his mind because he'd never seen a movie in his language before this, right? Like you wouldn't have unless you found a copy somehow of Red Lotus. So he knew instantly this is what he wanted to do. Like he had to make movies, and when he finished his undergraduate degree, he immediately enrolled in Chula here in Bangkok in a master's degree in film, and went on to become this guy. So this is Anysay here on the right. Just like he looks in the picture, he's one of the nicest people you could ever imagine meeting. On the left is a Lao actor, Kamhu Panludet, who is so ubiquitous in Lao movies that if I'm watching one and I don't see him, I start to wonder if he has a bad relationship with the director or something is wrong, but then eventually he pops up, usually. He's also a really wonderful guy. This is them in last December, at a panel that I moderated. I'm off screen on the right side there, on domestic cinema and sort of transnational audience and the importance of, is it important, really? We were asking, how important is it to make movies in your language? You know, why? And with all the struggles you face as Lao filmmakers, with a total domestic audience of under 8 million or so, right? Like, how do you do it, right? So it was a very interesting discussion. And one of the things that Anysay talked about, as he has often in public and in interviews, is the relationship that he has with the Department of Cinema. You know, if you're a Lao filmmaker, and you want to make your movie, first thing you do is you send your screenplay to the Department of Cinema, and they read it, and they tell you what scenes you have to take out, or that they don't want to see smoking, or that the bad guy can't win, right? So you have to rewrite the ending, you know, things like this, right? So there's always this negotiation, and of course, you know, they're looking for values and they're looking for these things. But Anysay he manages to be really positive about this, and he talks about it as a contextual restriction. We all have our restrictions, he says, right? It doesn't matter where you live or work, there's going to be something that's keeping you from doing something, right? So you work with it, right? You make your art in the context you're in. Oh, I'm going to go back. So I want to show you the trailer for his first film, which is called At the Horizon. It's a thriller. He made it in 2011, I think. The timeline won't be there. And it sort of surprised everybody because nobody expected the Lao government was going to approve a thriller, right? And in fact, he submitted the screenplay. He was still a student at Chula at the time, and they said, no way, nope, can't make it. And so he changed a few things, and they still said no, and so he persuaded them that it was for his master's degree, that only his committee was going to see it. Yes, he was going to make it in Laos, you know, so he needed the permits and stuff, but don't worry, he wasn't going to show it to anybody else, right? And they finally relented and let him make the movie. So I'll show you the trailer for that, just so you have a sense of what he's doing there.
Soda! Soda! มีใครอยู่นอกบ่
ลักพาโตสันวะ
มันคือแบบพอมันใหญ่พอมันรวยไม่อยากเห็นอย่างเห็น
เอาไอ้ว่ามันหลายกว่าเงินเดือนตัวอีกได้นี่
คันเป็นจังซี่แล้วเขาสิคบกันไปเฮ็ดหยังถ้าอยากมีกิ๊กหลายก็บ่ต้องมีแฟน
เย็นๆนะ
ซ้ำใดวะ
This is Kamhu, who was in the picture with Anysay one
อ้าว
slide
มื้อนี้
back.
เงินเดือนออกบ่ได้ไปกินเลือกแปลนกับหมู่บ่
แม่เกิดใหม่
แต่อีสานเนาะ
ค่อยๆไปซะเจ้าต้องการเท่าใด
แม่นไผเอาตัวสินไปข้าเจ้าอยากได้หยัง
ข่อยคิดว่าคงจะเป็นครอบครัวของผู้ตายนั่นแหละ
จะบ่ฮู้ว่าพ่อค่อยเป็นไผ
อย่าเลย
So At the Horizon kind of made a big splash because, and this is from an article in The Nation here in Bangkok, he, of course, after he made it, he showed it to the cinema department, and Boon Chow said, oh, this is actually really pretty good. You should have it at the Luang Prabang Film Festival this year, right? And so they did wind up releasing it to the public, and they blurred out the guns and stuff, as they do. But it was as it was cut in the first place. And just a reminder, that's this guy, Boon Chow, who was there at the start and who was writing the essays back in 2001, and I think is a big part of the story of why we have cinema happening at all in Laos right now. I'm going to have lunch with him next week. I haven't met him before, but again, give me your email. I'll let you know how that goes. I'll confirm all of this with him. So Anysay went on to make some more films. This is called Noi Above It All. And you can probably see the Oxfam logo there near the bottom. And this is just an indicator of where Lao filmmakers are getting their financial support. I mean, even today, there's not a lot of commercial support out there for their work because they have a small audience. They have a hard time reaching international audiences as well. But Oxfam wanted to support this. It's about a gay character, and they liked the story. He also made this romantic comedy. Romantic comedies remain dear to the heart of the Lao cinema department, partly because of Sabaidee Luang Prabang and its success, but they like the non-threatening nature of rom-coms. And this one, as with Sabaidee, makes Laos look incredibly beautiful. Like, they go to all these places in the movie in one day that would just be totally impossible, but it looks really cool. And this story is about a guy who, when he pulls his nose hairs, he can guess the exact date that a couple is going to break up. So, I would love, being Lao filmmakers, they don't really have to pitch to anybody. But they did pitch to us, so this logo here is ours. It's the Lao Filmmakers Fund, which Blue Chair administers. We raise money every year. We give it to filmmakers. So we supported this production back in 2015. It got the grant, actually. It was released in 2019. And it's actually, I personally hate rom-coms because I don't like when beautiful people are happy at the end of a movie. But I really enjoy this one. Okay, so we're going to move on to another filmmaker. This is the other, so there are two names you really need to know in contemporary Lao film. The first is Anysay. The second is Mattie. She's the one in the red dress, and maybe you've heard of her. Mattie she's Lao American. Her parents were refugees. She was born in the U.S. She grew up in the U.S. But in 2010, after her mother died, her dad wanted to move back to Laos. And she and her husband, Chris Larson, who's American, he's a screenwriter, he moved back with her. And they quickly became friends with these two guys. These are Duong Mani and Anuson, the founders of Lao Art Media, so the studio that worked to produce Sabaidee Luang Prabang. They got to be friends because Chris is a screenwriter, and Chris actually taught filmmaking and production and things. He's not a director. But he's a great screenwriter. He's very invested in the horror genre. This is what he loves. He programs for horror festivals around the world. And he met these guys, and they were so excited that they had somebody with some expertise in the country. They said, work with us. Let's make a movie. And he had a script for a movie called Chantali. And he said, Mattie will direct. And they all, including Mattie, said, what? Because Mattie was a ballet instructor with no real film experience. But Chris said, it's okay, I'm going to talk you through it. Like, I'll be in your ear the whole time. But, you should be the one to direct. And that's what they did. And they made Chantali. I don't know if any of you recognize the guy on that far end of the... He's an actor who's been in a lot of things in, like, Thai soap operas and stuff like that. No recognition. I was just curious. I asked him if he wanted me to cut him out of the picture, and he said, no, leave me in there. And Brandon Hashimoto on this far end, I get left and right mixed up when I'm in front of people. He's an American who lives in Vientiane. He's a producer. who just produced a film that was released last year. Next, I'm going to show you a clip from Chantilly, this horror film that Mattie and Chris made with Lao Art Media in 2000, and I believe they made it in 2011, 12. Yeah. So this woman has visions of her mother as a ghost in their house. She sometimes can remember seeing her mother attempt suicide as a little girl, as you'll see here. And as an adult, she's told she's crazy, she's not really seeing anything. She's given a lot of Valium by a French doctor. But she continues to see the ghost.
Look, เข้าใจระบบ
ลูกคิดว่าลูกเข้าใจแล้ว แม่บ่ได้ตายตอนที่แม่เกิดลูก อันนั้นวะที่แม่พยายามอยากจะบอกกับลูก
It's kind of scary. It's a Lao ghost story. It's really creepy. It's dark. It's not a perfect movie, but it got Mattie invited all over the place, and she wound up going to film labs and workshops in places like Locarno in Germany in the following years, and so it was a great start. And they all continue to work together at Lao Art Media. Her second film, Dearest Sister, is now, it's another Lao ghost horror film, is now on Netflix. You can watch it. And it was released in 2016. And in 2019, she released The Long Walk, which is also on Netflix. And these are the only Lao language movies you'll ever find on Netflix, incidentally. And The Long Walk is more like horror time travel paradox. It's actually a really cool movie, and I like it a lot. And she, at this point, is sort of Lao's face of contemporary cinema. She's, with each new film, she's at more festivals and out there giving interviews. If you look up Mattie Doe and read some of these interviews, you might not think she's a very nice person. Her husband characterizes her as the punk rocker of Lao film. We don't even have regular rockers, so I'm not sure why we need punk rockers yet. But she does tend to be pretty foul-mouthed and pretty kind of intense and angry in her interviews. She's enjoying herself, and she's actually a wonderful person, and a friend of mine now. I'll make sure I'm not missing anything. And she still works very closely with Chris. I mean, he's still writing everything that she produces. And she just finished shooting something a couple of weeks ago. Okay, so now, checking the time. Now you know Lao cinema is really getting somewhere when academic articles are published about it, right? So this guy writes about, in 2018, a really great essay in visual anthropology about both of the movies I showed you bits of, At the Horizon by Anysay and Chantilly by Mattie. And his thesis is really interesting because he argues that the movies actually benefit from the kind of dialogue and back and forth in the script revision process with the cinema department. And just to give you one example, in the Chantilly script, originally it was a ghost. It was a ghost story, it was a ghost, and that's what it was about. And the cinema department said, look, we can't officially have ghosts. Like, there aren't ghosts, right? Like, you have to have some science in this movie. So you got to have somebody who's telling her she's not actually seeing a ghost, she's crazy. And they were like, okay, yeah, that's her dad and this doctor that her dad... And it winds up being a much better story, right? Because they actually did bring these other voices in, and then there's real tension for us and for her, right? And we don't really know, except I think it's really a ghost. So that's Panibong, he's based in Los Angeles. And then this article from 21, it gets really eggheady here, but Jasmine Najwa Trice makes an argument that, like, and she's beyond thinking about domestic cinema, right? But she's talking about, like, what is a regional cinema? When you're talking about that and you say Southeast Asian cinema, what can you possibly even mean? What do we mean when we talk about those things, right? And maybe if we're going to have a regional cinema, we let it emerge, right, from a confluence, she says, of specific cultural and economic circumstances. So loosely cohered scenes, entangled networks of film festivals. I love that language as a film festival director. I like being in an entangled network of film festivals. But this actually winds up being a pretty nice description of the ethos that we seek at the Blue Chair Film Festival, and that we're kind of known for, which is that we don't do awards, we don't bother with a lot of the glitz. We bring as many directors as we can from around the region. We let them network. We let them talk about their next projects, meet their audiences, and magical things happen. So at the festival in December of last year, we had two women from the Philippines, Martica Escobar, who's a director, and her producer, whose name is Monster Jimenez, one of the better producer names, I think, out there. So Martica and Monster made a film called Leonore Will Never Die that showed at festivals all around the world, and now you can see it, and I see some nodding. And they met at our film festival in 2016. One was there for our talent lab, and the other showed up with a production she was part of. And they got together there in the Luang Prabang, and they went on to make Leonore Will Never Die. So they came back in December of last year. They told the story. We had Beer Lao with them. You know, it's that kind of an environment. And we watched Monster. She did a panel on producing or screenwriting. I can't remember what the panel was on. But she said, you know, in the Philippines, I'm an editor, I'm a writer, I'm a director, I'm, you know, like taking care of my son, I'm making dinner, and like all of the Lao heads around the room are like, oh yeah, no, like it's, so people are seeing what they have in common at festivals like this. So I think she's onto something. And an example from here in Thailand is the Purin Foundation. Some of you might know them, but they do film camps, and they have an annual film grant program that's open across Southeast Asia. A few years ago, Purin expressed some concern that they weren't getting enough Lao entries from Lao, Myanmar, and Thailand. They're like, and so they surveyed all the filmmakers in those countries, and the filmmakers said, you know, you're supporting features, and we're still making shorts. We're still learning. We still want to make short films. We're not ready to ask for this much money to make a feature. And so Purin started this short film camp just 2 years ago, and it's exclusively for these 3 countries plus Thailand. It happens in about a week here in Bangkok. It starts this year. So it's really cool, and they're bringing together filmmakers from 4 countries, you know, doing an intensive 2-week camp. The projects are already in development. They're going to be good. You know, the Purin people know what they're doing. So this is kind of, I like the intentionality of that. And this is our fund, which I mentioned earlier, the Lao Filmmakers Fund. Since 2013, we raise money, but we give it exclusively to Lao projects. It's a competitive application process. We get that money from the Swiss, from SDC, mainly for the past 3 years. And I like to describe it as money laundering in a way, in that they give the money to us and we give it to Lao filmmakers. They could never directly give it to Lao filmmakers. It would just be too complicated for everybody. We have the audit done, we do all the reporting, but it enables us then to share some resources with young people who are making films all around the country, actually. So in the past 3 years, we've given, I think it's around $120,000 directly to Lao film projects, which is, especially with the KIP where it is right now, that's a lot of money in Laos. And I'm going to wrap this up just with a short kind of slideshow of some of the contemporary people working in Laos. This is Kino. She's a producer. She produced the film about the nose hairs. Expiration date. This is Pakon Kam, both the actor and director, very active. She just got a grant from us this year. Panumat Disata Don made the film that I opened the presentation with, Fly Sandy Fly. Kongchan I'm not really familiar with, but Mitpasa is a fantastic director and really up and coming. She won an award for her first short film, several awards. She's great, actually. Dawn Butisang and team. I didn't want to name everybody in this slide, but the guy on her right is a photographer based in Laos, Audrey Berger. It's fabulous. But Dawn is Hmong and based in Sien Quang and she's mainly made short films. I love Mattie. Mattie's my friend, but one of my main goals is to see another one of these women make a feature film so that we can have more than Mattie out there in the world being the Lao woman filmmaker. Ponsavan and Misuda, both actors and Misuda I don't think has directed, but she produces a lot. Son Pasit, this guy's nickname is Good. He lives in Luang Prabang. Made a film that we premiered at the festival last year starring a deaf-mute boy called Absence of Sound, which had an enormous, it was a local film with local people in it, with local scenes, and we had, as always, we had 800 blue chairs, but there were at least 1,600 people milling around in there, and it was a very exciting evening. Saison Kam is very talented, has done some of the better labs around the world with a project he's had in development for a few years. And I'll give you his email. You can write him a note and tell him to get back to work on that, please. Sula made a film that was released last year called Shadow. This is like a nice kind of past and present story. Sula is Lao French and has for many years worked with the Lao Cinema Department in Vientiane, and has recently decided that he wants to branch off on his own, which sounds a lot like Som Ock to me, and I'm concerned for his future. Chan Samai is for me, one of the most exciting young documentary filmmakers we have. She's got a great eye, and she makes these things, the kind of documentary where the government should be concerned, but they don't get it. She's making those movies, so she's cool with everybody, but the movies are really smart. She made a movie about the development of the train in Laos. Its focal point is a salt production facility in Bokeo that's been there for over 100 years, that's had to move several times, and there are busloads of Chinese tourists driving up to this salt facility and taking pictures, and it's just she tells stories that are not the stories you're watching necessarily. She's really brilliant. This guy just premiered his first feature at the Shanghai International Film Festival this year. It's called The Signal, and our Filmmaker Fund supported that as well. So I'm going to end here. This is not a great picture of me. I don't love me in this picture, but I'm sharing it because the woman in pink is Boadeng, the star of Red Lotus. So this is Red Lotus. That's her blown up in the background as well. With us are Saison Kam, the filmmaker, Vaughn, who works with me at the film festival, and my partner Donna is at this end of the group. So back when I started doing the research for this, and I found that 1999 essay by Som Ock, and I read it again, and I was amazed. I was like, who is this guy? He made the first movie, really kind of arguably the first ever movie that we have still from Laos. And he wrote this essay in 1999, and I'm Googling like crazy. I can't find anything. And I finally asked Vaughn to ask Kam on the end there, what happened to Som Ock? And she starts getting back a flood of WhatsApp texts, right? And he says, I really want to make the Searching for Sugar Man documentary about Som Ock. Like, it's a there's a story there, right? And he said, look, he still runs a restaurant in Vientiane with his wife. He's still there. Let's go see him when you're in town. And so this was the following week. We went down to Vientiane, And we all went to this restaurant. It was a big, sprawling place. It was mid-afternoon. It was totally empty. And we had been told Som Ock probably wouldn't come out and talk to us. I'm not sure exactly what the story is, but apparently he doesn't want to talk about it, right? So there's a story there. But Somchit was happy to sit down with us, and she spent like 90 minutes telling us the story of the production of Red Lotus and the story of the years that followed. They had 4 kids. They've raised 4 kids. They've all gone to study in different countries. None of them cares about filmmaking. And she said that after 99, they had a Cambodian producer who's well known, Ritipan. They had started to raise money for the film. They had commitments from Korea, from Japan, from France. And what she said, this is not independently verified, was that at that point, the Lao cinema department said that they were going to have to control the budget, even though Som Ock was working from a private company. And remember, this is 2000. This is well before any of the reforms or any of the changes that Boon Chau wanted to push, right? This is like year 2000. None of that stuff has happened. And the cinema department tells him, we have to control your money. And he said, no way. And he stopped. And he took his screenplay back. And he's been holed up in a restaurant ever since. And for me, it's both kind of heartbreaking and miraculous that he's still there. And he's somebody, if you look at YouTube and you watch Red Lotus, you can, even the terrible copy, you can see his skill. I mean, you can see what he's doing as a photographer. You know that he knows what he's doing. He knows how to tell a story visually. He knows what he's doing as an editor. And so it's heartbreaking to know that he's languished in silence for all these years. And our goal next is to get him out, to get him on screen, talking, and to find that screenplay and maybe make that one. So I talked more than I promised. I'm sorry. Our website, I just bought this domain recently. Oh, yeah, that's the domain. So it resolves to the old LP Film Fest website. But that's how to find me, and that's how to find more information about what we do. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to take some questions.
So now we will have some mics coming round. So if you want to ask a question, I hope you will.
Did he talk to you?
Som Ock? Yeah. Sorry, I was looking for you. Somchit went to get him. After she talked to us for about 45 minutes.
They're still married?
They're still married. Yeah, he was in the back. He was there the day we were there, and she said, let me go see if he'll come out. And she was gone about 10 minutes. And she said, next time, call ahead and make an appointment. And my goal, I've heard from some of the other cinema department guys, the current guys, that he likes to have a beer. And so my goal is to get him some Pilsner Urquell. He spent 9 years in Czechoslovakia, right? So I think he'd be excited to see a good Czech beer. Show up with that, right? Make an appointment. So I'm still hoping to talk with him sometime. Yeah.
Thank you very much for a very interesting lecture. I have a question. Do Lao films get shown in Thailand, particularly in places like Isan, where the language is very similar to Laos?
Yeah, the best relationship at the moment is with Khon Kaen. So the university in Khon Kaen has a film festival and a film program, and they're actually very supportive of their Lao peers. So I was just talking today with Lee Pongsavan, who will be a judge for their festival this year. And another, the guy from Luang Prabang, his film about the deaf boy will show at their festival in Khon Kaen. So there's some exchange there. Not a lot, but it's growing. The Lao government isn't thrilled about that. They would rather that the partnerships were with Vietnam, and they're closer to their peers in Cambodia. But they don't do anything to stop it either. So it's a nice connection, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
What is it an issue like do the movies there? Is it about money, or is it just like to present an image to the world.
Do you mean with the cinema department and the regulations, or with the difficulty of making things in general? I mean,
with the business of filmmaking and the government.
It's So the business is about money. It's about the fact that the audience is tiny, and so go ahead.
So then my question is, then they should just focus more on the international audience online and distribution, and not worry about their own country that much.
Yeah, and that's interesting. It's something that Anysay, a filmmaker like Anysay is not. He wants to speak to people in his country, right? He wants to reach them, and even if you want to reach the international audience, if you want to make the movie in Laos, you still got to have it cleared. And according to the law on film, which I've had a very thorough introduction to, even to make a movie in Laos and show it abroad, the cinema department wants to okay that, right? They want to approve it. So there's some restrictions there. Now, Mattie, though, is a good example of what you're talking about. Mattie, a film like The Long Walk, is not really popular with Lao audiences. It's a little bit abstruse. It's a little bit hard, right? It's not hard, but it's not an easy film to digest. In fact, I had to watch it twice before I really got everything, right? So there's a lot happening there. It's been way popular in other countries, right? So and I think she's still finding where the line is. She wants to be right on it, right? So she's still reaching Lao audiences, but she has a chance to make what she wants to make.
As a Lao citizen, you can't release anything online. Like you couldn't make a deal with a streaming service on your own. Is that? I guess my question would be about Lao laws.
Yeah, according to the letter of the law, that's right. That's right.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So there's a whole world that I don't understand here.
Yeah. They want absolute sort of like, if you're saying this is coming from Laos, or you want to make it here, you're going to have us approve it before it goes online. We had a virtual festival in 2020 because we couldn't be live. And our festival, I don't think I said this, but we're exclusive to Southeast Asia, to just the 10 countries that comprise ASEAN, really. And we had a selection from across ASEAN, and we made the festival free for anybody in the 10 countries to watch. And this really sort of freaked the government out because so things they had let us show in the past live, they did not let us show virtually. And I think it's because they imagined we were broadcasting, right? We're broadcasting from Laos to the world. Here's a story about a gay character, and they didn't want it, right? They didn't, and specifically, they said, no, you cannot have this short film about a lesbian woman. We don't want people in Indonesia to think that's how we are, right? So it was so those tensions are always there. Though I should say, they're always, the scene always evolves as well, like it would anywhere. One more question, I think. Yeah. Sure.
Do you know anything about why Netflix decided to show a couple of films from Lao, and did the government get upset about that?
No, I'm sure Mattie had. Because Mattie's film was from the start, it went through the system, right? So they were part of it. The founders of Lao Art Media, Duong Mani and Anuson, have always remained close to the cinema department. They worked for the cinema department originally. So what Mattie makes is vetted all the way through, right? It's ready for exhibition in Lao theaters or for exhibition abroad. I don't know who had the hustle to get Netflix to put it on. I imagine it was Mattie. I think she's at film festivals all over the world. She's meeting people, and I think she said, you got to have my movie, and now they have two. Was there one more? Yeah, I'll take one more, and then I should let you go home, probably.
Yeah, thank you for interesting lecture. I would like to know about the regulation or restriction from the Lao government when you have the Rouge Film Festival.
Yeah.
And how can you get the budget from the festival?
I'll try to be brief. But, everything we screen at the festival, they have to watch. And one of my major accomplishments in the past 3 years has been getting them to watch those things online, on Film Freeway and other sort of submission portals. But so we choose our 26 to 32 movies from around the region, and then we send them all to Vientiane, and we pay $30 per movie for them to watch the movies and tell us if we can show them or not. And we know with about 98% certainty what they're going to say no to, but we always include a couple of those anyway. It's worth $60 just for them to get to watch the movie, in my opinion, right? So last year this was the main issue for us last year, was that the process was very slow. And we were the Luang Prabang Film Festival until mid-November. We had our posters around town. We had our new T-shirts for 2022. And I was still awaiting my permissions to show the actual movies. They hadn't come back. We knew what they were because we have a friendly relationship with the cinema department. But we knew the ministry was withholding the permission for some reason they've never explained. And then they called us one day and said, you can have the permission, but for a different film festival. You have to change your name. And it's now under 3 weeks to the film festival. I had actually decided to cancel the film festival a few days before. I was giving up. I'd already spent way too much money. People were flying in, and I couldn't show any movies. And it's amazing I didn't have a stroke, frankly. But I didn't have a stroke, and we said, how about Blue Chair? Because it's always been there. It's part of our logo. And for 2 days, Vaughn, who was in the picture with me earlier, Vaughn got phone calls from them asking, what's the meaning of the blue chair, right? And really, I mean, they from the cinema department, from our local Department of Culture, no, but what does it really mean? And she just stayed on message. You know, it's a blue resin chair. It's kind of a symbol for us of the fact that the festival is free of charge, right? Anybody can come. It's accessible, right? And they finally relented and said, okay, you can be blue chair. So that's who we are today. And I'm sorry for going on at length, but that comes from that process last year. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna let you all go home. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you very much. I think we have all learned so much from you tonight, and I must say, in the last few months, I think many of us were thrilled about the international success of The Signal. So let us hope that that is only the beginning of much more to come from Lao cinema. And now, a token of appreciation.